Hello and welcome to my channel. I am ZodiacBandit, and today I want to be talking about potential DMPCs in Campaign 3. So, what is a DMPC? A DMPC is a NPC that is basically another player character. The DM built them the same way a player would build a character, and then the DM throws that character into the game, has them interact socially and in combat with the players, and it basically lets them be a player themselves within the game. So, who are these characters in Critical Role in the grand scheme of things? Because I want to give a few examples so we can further look at more characters within Campaign 3 and see who fits this category. So naturally, we're going to look at Campaign 1 first and look at a few examples of potential DMPCs. Now, to give a bit more on a DMPC, they don't have to strictly be combat orientated. They can also help them within, social environments. So for me, the first DMPC I want to talk about that is definitely a DMPC, and from Matt's own words, is Allura. Allura only helped them a few times in battle, and she was more of a speaking type of DMPC for the characters themselves. She spoke for them, with them a lot, and even in a different campaign did she choose to speak up for the PCs. So she's had a few social encounters with two different groups across two different campaigns, and potentially could show up in this one if she felt like it, or if Matt felt like it. But also, she did take part in a battle against Raishan, the last battle for Raishan's life, basically. The last fight in the Chroma Conclave arc. So she was definitely a combative one and a social speaking one. Another character who is less social speaking in Campaign 1 and is more combat orientated is Kima. Kima was in a ton of fights. I believe she also was in that Raishan fight, and she joined the party super early on. Like within the first 10 episodes, she makes her first appearance and is fighting alongside of them with them until they leave the underground, or the Underdark. So she's there and fighting with them for a while. So she's definitely more of a combative DMPC. And the last one from Campaign 1 is Jarrett. Jarrett shows up a handful of times for different social interactions and helps them fight Thordak, I believe, and is kind of instrumental to Scalen's downfall in a kind of way. So he was very much also one of those DMPCs from Campaign 1. And from Campaign 2, there's honestly a lot less, but I will say one of them has a far greater impact. But the first one I want to talk about is obviously Allura again. I just talked about it earlier, so it doesn't matter. Now we move on to Pumat Sol. Pumat Sol helped them with a handful of obviously giving them items, but he did have a handful of social interactions with them as certain people of, I believe, Service Assembly showed up within and sort of got them off everyone's back and sort of got them to look away from the party. So Pumat Sol was helpful there, but he also took place in a very important fight against Oban and the Laughing Hand, mainly the Laughing Hand. But he was instrumental in that fight as he helped because they were minus a character and in fact were fighting against that player. So very much needed in that moment, Pumat Sol was, but still combative and helped them a handful of times socially. So definitely a lesser DMPC. But a DMPC that is very major and is typically the one that I think of when I think of Matt DMPCs is Essek. And everyone agrees it's probably the one that's the most, that is a DMPC. He is in so many social encounters. Literally, I can't count how many. And he helps them with a handful of fights. Mainly the last one in the campaign for Campaign 2. He is literally a part of the Mighty Nine. He is the 9th member of the Mighty Nine. So, kind of important, kind of a big deal. Essek, for sure, is the quintessential DMPC. In fact, what a lot of people might not know is he was actually intended to be a villain and turned into more of a heroic character as the party began to move, in a more positive direction with him and invited him over for dinner and food and just to hang out and chill every once in a while. So Essek is a character who developed quite a bit. He even has character development. How much more of an NPC or DMPC do you need? So now that we've looked at a handful of DMPCs from different campaigns, it's time to look at Campaign 3. And the first one that I would like to bring up is Lord Esteros. Because obviously Lord Esteros has helped them very much so within, a handful of settings. He's helped them basically do everything they did in Jushar, gave them leads and all that, which would make him more of an, quest giver. But he also helped them socially within the ball setting. So I do believe there is a little bit of him who is DMPC-like. He even fought them at one point, which to me says that at one point he could potentially fight alongside them. But I would look at Esteros as more of a social DMPC, where he certainly helped them at the ball and has given them a handful of, bring my name up and you'll get a meeting with this person type of character. Which, might not necessarily mean DMPC, but I can definitely see him potentially becoming one. And that's the whole point. Because right now, in Campaign 3, there really hasn't been a true DMPC introduced, at least not to the extent of the other characters. And next is the Green Seekers, two characters who helped them get into the mines underneath Jushar or within Jushar to get them to fight the Shade Mother, and then they helped them fight the Shade Mother and very, very, very many. Wow, that was a terrible sentence. A lot of Shade creepers as they were trying to leave and enter. So they definitely helped them in a social environment and a combat environment, and there is no doubt in my mind that they show up yet again at some point as, they were fun characters. They were also antagonistic against them at one point, but not for very long, and was mainly just against Dorian. So there's that. I do believe at some point we will see them again in a social environment and potentially another combat environment. So fingers crossed for these two because I really enjoyed them. And lastly is Anavo. Now this character has never indicated any social help or, combat help. But there has been a handful of times where they could have. So initially, when they met her, they just had to pay her off to get information from her. But I do believe if they paid enough, she would have gone with them to fight Ira in that first meeting with him as they tried to free Gurge. And later, they literally joined sides with her in the Seat of Disdain, but they tossed her right at Ratanish. But I think if they hadn't have done that and just sided with her outright, she would have helped them during the Odahan fight. Now, they would have used up more of their stuff against Ratanish before getting to Odahan, so maybe it would have been a bad move. But I do think Matt built that Odahan fight with Anavo potentially in mind, doing range damage, like the heavy range damage she's able to do. So definitely think Anavo is someone who could or was supposed to be a DMPC-like character. But because of all the actions and the choices that the players made, it never materialized. I truly believe this character was supposed to be like some sort of representation of a class Matt has wanted to build or wanted to use, and none of the players took it when he made it. So, I don't know. I think Anavo is definitely supposed to be a DMPC, but has never materialized in either encounter they've had with her. And there you have it. 4 characters who I believe are potential DMPCs for this campaign. Now, they might not at all be DMPCs, and I'm looking too far into it, but I think all of them have the possibility of showing back up and helping them socially or helping them in combat. And you never know. They might introduce, Matt might introduce another character down the line who is more of a Essek type, who is definitely a DMPC after enough trust is earned or enough money is paid. So, yeah. Until then, until we have a defined character who has showed up a handful of times and helped them both socially and in combat, we're not going to necessarily get that answer. And I get the feeling that this campaign, we're going to have a lot more guests, so maybe DMPCs might not be as, relevant like Essek was when there was 0 guests to be found toward the end of Campaign 2. So, you never know. DMPC might never materialize in this game, as I get the feeling they're going to want to throw a handful more guests at us because, like I said, they didn't have any at the end of Campaign 3, end of Campaign 2. So, you never know. Do you think we've already met the DMPC of Campaign 3, or are they to be introduced in the future and be more of an Essek type? Start off as an antagonist and then sort of shift towards something else. Maybe it's Ira. Probably not. In fact, it's definitely not Ira. I don't know why I would ever suggest such a thing. Oh well. See you guys later. Peace.